بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له الملك الحق المبين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله سيد ولد آدم أجمعين صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين على مر الأيام والليالي والشهور والسنين أما بعد. As we continue the explanation of this great treatise entitled Fataawa al-Hamawiyyah al-Kubra by the great Imam Ahmad Abu Abbas Taqiyuddin Ahmad ibn Abd al-Halim ibn Abd al-Salam Taymiyyah al-Harrani al-Dimashqi rahimahullah, who died 728 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. But the time now is currently 7:04 p.m. Wednesday, June 29, 2022, where today on the Hijri calendar, which is the last month bi'idhnillah of the month of the Qa'dah, on this day of Wednesday, the year 1443 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. As we continue in the explanation, we were discussing the affair with Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, that he said in this tremendous benefit that we extracted from the previous lesson. It says, وَقَدْ رُوِيَ عَنِ ابْنِ عَبَّاسٍ مَا ذَكَرَهُ عَبْدُ الرَّزَّاقِ وغيره في تفسيرهم عنه أنه قال تفسير القرآن على 4 أوجه: تفسير تعرفه العرب من كلامها، وتفسير لا يعذر أحد بجهالته، وتفسير يعلمه العلماء، وتفسير لا يعلمه إلا الله، من ادعى علمه فهو كاذب. He says, this has been narrated upon Ibn Abbas of what the great Imam had conveyed upon the great Imam Abdur Razzaq ibn Hammam ibn Nafi' al-San'ani al-Yamani, that he reported that Ibn Abbas mentioned in his tafsir what was related in regards to what the great Sahabi Tarjuman al-Quran Ibn Abbas said. He said the explanation of the Quran is in 4 ways. He says, تفسير تعرفه العرب من كلامها, the explanation of the Quran of which the Arabs know from their language, meaning al-Arabiyyah. And the second is the tafsir in which no one is excused of its ignorance, meaning no one is excused of being ignorant of. And the third is what we mentioned last class, the tafsir in which the scholars only know, meaning those who possess knowledge. And the fourth is the tafsir in which no one knows except Allah, or the ta'wil that no one knows except Allah. And whoever claims its knowledge, then he's a liar, or he has lied. We talked about last class what Shaykh al-Islam mentioned in this regard. We said, وَهَذَا كَمَا قَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. He said, for verily no soul knows what is hidden from him of coolness of his eyes, meaning that great reward that's been prepared for the one who has put forth righteous actions, and what Allah Ta'ala has what? Kept hidden of the great reward and repayment which they will receive. It said, وَقَالَ النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ يقول الله تعالى أعددت لعباد الصالحين ما لا عين رأت ولا أذن سمعت وَلَا خَطَرَ عَلَى قَلْبِ بَشَرٍ. Then Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, we're going to explain this again everyone, so don't worry. Then he goes on to say, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Allah mentions in that authentic hadith, which is al-hadith al-Qudsi, verily I have prepared for my righteous servants what no eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor has come to the mind of the heart of any human being. Then Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, وَكَذَلِكَ عِلْمُ السَّاعَةِ وَنَحْوَ ذَلِكَ فَهَذَا مِنَ التَّأْوِيلِ الَّذِي لَا يَعْلَمُهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَإِن كُنَّا نَفْهَمُ مَعَانِيَ مَا خُوطِبْنَا بِهِ ونفهم من الكلام ما قصد إفهامنا إياه كما قال الله تعالى أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوبهم أقفالها وقال الله تعالى أفلم يتدبروا القول فأمر بتدبر القرآن كله لا بتدبر بعضه. Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, let's read it quickly so we can explain it. He said, likewise, the knowledge of the hour. And similar to that, this is from the type of ta'wil that no one knows except Allah. No one knows when it will be established. No one knows how it will be exactly, the details, even though it's been narrated. He says, even though, this is what Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, even though we understand the meanings of what we were addressed by, what has been conveyed to us, and we understand of the speech of what our understanding attains, as Allah has commanded us to understand and contemplate on the Quran, meaning understand it and extract this understanding. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنِ Do they not contemplate on the Quran? Or is it upon their hearts those locks? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, أَفَلَمْ يَتَدَبَّرُوا الْقَوْلِ He said, do they not contemplate the statement or the speech of Allah? Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, فَأَمْرَ بِتَدَبُّرِ الْقُرْآنِ كُلِّهِ لَا بِتَدَبُّرِ بَعْضِهِ For Allah ta'ala has commanded us for contemplation of the Quran, all of it, not some of it. Meaning that we extract the proper meanings from it. The proper meanings are supposed to be attained when we understand it and when we contemplate, meaning contemplation means that you have understanding of it. Listen to what Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, وقال أبو عبد الرحمن السلمي قال حدثنا الذين كانوا يقرؤوننا القرآن عثمان بن عفان وعبد الله بن مسعود وغيرهما أنهم كانوا إذا تعلموا من النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم 10 آيات لم يتجاوزوها حتى يتعلموا ما فيها من العلم والعمل قالوا فتعلمنا القرآن والعلم والعمل جميعا. Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, we'll just read it quickly because this is the text, this is not the explanation, everyone, but this is the actual text. He said, the great tabi'i al-Imam Abu Abdur Rahman al-Sulami, this great scholar from the Salaf, from the tabi'i, we'll talk about in depth of who he was exactly. We'll talk about that in a minute. He said, قال حدثنا الذين كانوا يقرؤوننا القرآن. Abdur Rahman al-Sulami said, the one who said or conveyed to us those who used to read the Quran and teach us the Quran and teach us its recital, of recitation of it properly. He said, those who taught us the Quran, taught us the proper meanings of it and how to recite it properly. Who are they? The great Sahabi Uthman bin Affan or Abdullah bin Mas'ud. And other than them, from the great Sahaba. Listen what this great Tabi'i al-Jalil al-Fadil, what he says. وقال أبو عبد الرحمن السلمي. He said that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and Uthman bin Affan and other than them from the great scholars of this religion, and at the head of them is the Sahaba. He said that they used to learn from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam 10 verses and that's it. And they would not surpass it until they understood what was in it or what it possessed of knowledge and application, meaning in the actions. قالوا فتعلمنا القرآن والعلم والعمل جميعا. So this type of methodology, everyone shows why the Sahaba and those who followed them from the Tabi'een were from the greatest of this ummah. Why? They just learned 10 ayat, memorized those ayat. Then, once they contemplated and they had extracted the proper meanings, they made sure they applied it. And it says, we learned the Quran, its knowledge, and its proper application. That's why they became the best of this ummah. So, Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, وَقَالَ مُجَاهِدْ ibn Jabr, I have shown the Mus'haf, the Quran, to Ibn Abbas, from Surah Al-Fatiha until the end of the Quran. And I would stop every ayah and I would ask Ibn Abbas concerning its knowledge. Every ayah, Mujahid ibn Jabr stopped and asked Ibn Abbas, asking him about the meaning of that specific verse, and he will give him some knowledge concerning it. Then the great scholar from the Salaf, from the Tabi'een, the great Imam Ash-Sha'bi, and his name was Abu Amr Amir bin Sharahil Ash-Sha'bi, that he said, "Ma ibtada'a ahadun bid'atan illa wa fi kitabillah bayanuha." No one innovated an innovation except in the book of Allah is its clarification, meaning it's what? It's rebuttal and its refutation. وقال مسروق بن الأجدع ما قال أصحاب محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم عن شيء إلا وعلمه في القرآن ولكن علمنا قصر عنه. The great tabi'i Masruq ibn al-Ajda', and I'll explain why his name was Masruq. Because certain people probably hear his name. Why is his name Masruq? Masruq is a strange name. Masruq basically means stolen. Stolen, like somebody had stolen or steal. Sadiqa means to steal. Masruq means stolen. Ismu maf'ul in the Arabic language, right everyone? But there's a reason why his name is Masruq. We'll talk about that in a minute. Why his name was Masruq. It says, ما قال أصحاب محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم عن شيء إلا وعلمه في القرآن ولكن علمنا قصر عنه. He said, Masruq mentioned and said that the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they did not mention anything except that its knowledge was in the Quran. However, our knowledge had come up short, meaning that we were ignorant of it, but we know that in the book of Allah and in the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, the knowledge was complete. But due to our lack of knowledge in certain affairs is the reason why what? Our knowledge did not attain that particular knowledge, which is to show absolute what? Humbleness. To let one know that if something is not in the mind is understood, they accuse themselves of them being ignorant of those affairs, not accusing the book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah of coming up short. However, what? Their knowledge came up short. Fine. So now let's go to the sharh, everyone. Let's go to the explanation quickly. Fine. The great Imam, and we'll talk about some of the names of these great scholars of the religion. From them is Abu Abdur Rahman as-Sulami. We'll talk about who he is in a minute. طيب, Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, وَقَدْ رُوِيَ عَنْ ibn Abbas, there has been narrated upon Ibn Abbas what the great Imam Abdur Razzaq al-San'ani al-Himyari al-Yamani, what he conveyed in his book. The statement of Ibn Abbas saying that the explanation of the Quran is in 4 ways. We talked about this last class, right everyone? Quickly so we can go over it, because we mentioned this point last class. He said, the number 1 is the mufradat, the words that are used in the Quran or the verses of the Quran in which the Arab knows. That is in the pure Arabic language. Meaning those words that are very what? Eloquent, in which you'll find that is utilized either in the book of Allah or in the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That we know that the reference point in that is where everyone? In the Arabic language. Meaning in the pure Arabic language that was what? Protected until those words from the non-Arabs had crept inside. Had crept inside from those who embraced Islam that were not from the Arabs when Islam spread it. But the reference point is that it goes or returns back to what? To those who know the Arabic language in its purest form. Who are they? The people such as, for example, the people of the Badiya or the people of Fitra. Usually you'll find that the people who were from the Bedouins, they were the ones that were very eloquent. They were the ones that had preserved the language, and they were the ones that were considered those who mutakhasisun, those who specialize, of course, from the scholars of this religion. And those who Allah Ta'ala made them the reasons of why the Arabic language was preserved, where their tongues remained pure. He said these are the reference points that we return back to in this regard. For example, you'll find similar to that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انْفَطَرَتْ. He said that something, if it's not understood clearly, what is the meaning of, for example, انْفَطَرَتْ? Then a person will go back to those who Allah made as a reason for the Arabic language being preserved from the A'rab or the Bedouins or other than them from the scholars of this religion, in which Allah made them the reasons of why the Arabic language remained in its purest form. You will ask the Arabi, the Badawi, and he will let you know that this eloquent word here, it means such and such. So that's the first way in which you'll find that the Arabic language is what? Or the reference point in which those words that are used in the Quran are used. And in the authentic Sunnah, you'll find certain words that you read that the word is a word that's very eloquent. It's not from those common words that are used, but it's on a high level. What's the reference point that we return back to in order to attain its proper meaning? We go back to all these sources from those who preserve the Arabic language until the point where you'll know that those scholars have even authored literature in this regard. And the books are called, what everyone? Kutub al-Ghara'ib. Books of Ghara'ib, meaning the definitions of those words that are eloquent, that are rarely used, but they're on a high level of eloquence. For example, Al-Nihaya fi Gharib al-Hadith by Ibn Athir. Al-Nihaya fi Gharib al-Hadith. Fi Gharib Al-Nihaya fi Gharib al-Quran. Or fi Gharib al-Hadith, it also gives you a Gharib al-Hadith too. It's called Nihaya. For you'll find that Ibn Athir, you'll find that he gives the definition of those words that are on a high level of eloquence, and he explains it in regards to how the Arab understood it when the Arabic, of course, was preserved in its purest form. For at any rate, just to sum it up, that's the first way one attains the proper meaning of certain eloquent words that are used in the Book of Allah and the authentic Sunnah, the Message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah here gave us the first point. The first point is what, everyone? The first point is that those words that are used in the Book of Allah, when one does not know its meaning, then he's referred back to those points or those reference points where the Arabic language was preserved from them, like we said, those who are the scholars of the Arabic language, and those who specialize in that field, and those in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them the reasons of why the Arabic language remained in its purest form before our brothers who are from the non-Arabs, where their words started to creep in. And certain words became Arabized, but it's not originally from the Arabic language. So those type of affairs in which Shaykh al-Islam laid down is the first point, as you read in your book. The second one is, with tafsir, la yu'zaru ahadu bi jahalati. The tafsir, the explanation of the verses in the Book of Allah, where no one will be pardoned or excused of his ignorance. Meaning every Muslim has to have this knowledge. No one will be pardoned or excused of his ignorance. Meaning he has to have knowledge of it. ذَلِكَ كَتَفْسِيرِ آيَاتِ الْأَحْكَامِ. He said, for example, the explanation of those verses in regards to those rulings and affairs is connected with affairs of worship. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Surah Al-Baqarah, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةِ. Establish the prayer and give zakat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this ayah. Once a person embraces Islam, he is obliged immediately to set out to know its meaning. And he will not be pardoned or excused of his ignorance. Meaning he's supposed to know that those 5 prayers are an obligation. And he cannot say, well, I don't know, and keep putting it off until he remains ignorant all the way up to his death. Once he becomes Muslim, he's obliged to find that these affairs are obligations that he's supposed to carry out on a daily basis. For example, when he hears the ayah, establish salah, pay the zakat, no one is excused from the Arabs or the non-Arabs. As long as he says that he believes in Allah, and he believes in the Book of Allah and the Sunnah, the Message of Allah, إِذْ لَا يَتَمَكَّنُ مِنْ أَدَاءِ الصَّلَاةِ وَالصِّيَامِ وَالزَّكَاةِ وَالْحَجِّ إِلَّا إِذَا عَرَفَ مَعَانِيَ هَدِهِ الْكَلِمَاتِ. He says, hence when a person does not know that he's supposed to carry out the performance of the prayer and fasting and zakat and hajj and other than them, unless he understands the meanings of these verses. So everyone, from every Muslim, whether they be from the Arabs and the non-Arabs, as far as in regards to the second point that Shaykh al-Islam is mentioning here, that he will not be excused of his ignorance. For example, Allah Ta'ala has obliged when a person immediately, when he accepts Islam, he immediately learns Tawheed and Shirk. Immediately. That's an affair that's considered from the daruriyat. That's an affair that's considered from the most dire of all necessities, if not. That if you don't learn it, it could be a means of your destruction. Yes. A person, as soon as they embrace Islam, they embark upon learning the Tawheed and what monotheism is and what polytheism is, and its forms and its types. And that every Muslim sets out to do that immediately, and they do not what? Put it off or procrastinate to say that maybe one day when I feel like it. No. On the day of resurrection, everybody will be held accountable for them learning the Tawheed of Allah. Did you learn it? Did you set out to educate yourself properly in this regard? And it's obliged upon everyone to also immediately, when they embrace Islam, to learn of the deviant sects and have some knowledge of that. Have knowledge of it and know what is their what? Defects. And what's their what? Deficiencies in regards to their deviations. In regards to their deviations, so you can know to avoid it. And to teach your children, your family to avoid them. Those affairs in which, like we said, brothers and sisters, one attains it by what? When they read the Quran, and those affairs in regards to what Allah has mentioned in this book and in authentic sunnah, that every Muslim has been obliged to learn, and they will not be excused of its ignorance. Meaning that all of us will be asked concerning this type of knowledge, especially the knowledge which is considered from the fundamentals and the foundations in which the religion is built upon. Everyone is supposed to learn what Tawheed is, Shirk is, Kufr is, Bid'ah, Sunnah, all those affairs we have been obliged to what? Carry out, so we could be educated in those matters, and one will not be excused unless he lives in some far remote place where none of the knowledge is what? Prevalent. And that's in certain instances. Here, especially here in America, no one has any excuse. They have masajid, they have teachers, they have literature, they have knowledge, they have easy, accessible ways to educate themselves. These type of affairs, once they have been in front of you, it's incumbent upon one to what? Act and try to what? Educate themselves. That's why Shaykh al-Islam mentioned and said, this is the second point. You'll find that no one will be excused of his ignorance. So when a person hears those ayat in the book of Allah, worship Allah, do not set up partners with him in his worship, you're supposed to understand its meaning. And find out the details of that affair. Right, so that's number 2. Number 3, the tafsir ya'lamuhu al-ulama. The tafsir in which the scholars or those well grounded in knowledge know. What are those affairs, brothers and sisters? What are they? The tafsir or the verses of the Quran in which you'll find that the ulama only know, meaning the details of certain verses. Meaning, for example, that you'll find that the great Imam Shaykh Muhammad Aman al-Jamili, he says, the third point here, he said, كالتوفيق بين ما ظاهره التعارض من آيات الكتاب ومن السنة وكمعرفة المعنى المراد من الألفاظ التي تحتمل عدة معاني. معرفة المراد من السماء، هل المراد بالسماء المطر أو المراد بالسماء السحاب أو المراد بالسماء ذاك الجرم المبني وغير ذلك. هذه المعاني لا يعلمها إلا العلماء. The third, in which the ulama only knows. For example, that the ulama knows with those verses, they're able to clarify to you what is correct in regards to those verses in the book of Allah, whereas you might come across certain verses that the apparent meaning of what you see is as if there seems as if it's a contradiction from the verses in the book of Allah and in the Sunnah. And those scholars are able to come and clarify to you those verses in order to expose and show that there is no contradiction. And that the knowledge of those meanings, what is intended by it in certain verses, is that sometimes you'll find that the verses that they can carry numerous meanings. For example, the knowledge of what is intended by the word as-sama. The word as-sama, what is intended by it in certain instances can mean rain. As we know, the word as-sama, linguistically, people would think that it means what? The heavens, or heaven, or sky. But sometimes sama comes, contextually it means what? Rain. Sometimes the word sama comes and contextually it means what? Clouds. And sometimes sama comes and the intention of it is that which you'll find in the heavens of those stars. And other than that, from the meanings. These type of meanings, and those who can clarify it to you, to tell you what is been acceptable in regards to those verses where they can carry some of those meanings, and the meanings that actually contradict what goes against the book of Allah, those who clarify it is those who have knowledge. They'll be able to tell you, no, this verse can mean this meaning, this meaning, this meaning. And this verse only means this. And it does not mean this. Or this meaning goes against what Allah has revealed. Those people and those who possess knowledge can clarify that. No one knows that except those who truly educate themselves to this extent where they possess these details. Those are the scholars, those are the ulama, those are the students of knowledge, those who have the proper tools to tell you that, for example, the verses in the book of Allah, that they have what they call ikhtilaf tanawwu', and then you have the second type which is called ikhtilaf al-tadad. You have which is called certain verses where Allah Ta'ala has revealed them where they can mean numerous meanings, which is called ikhtilaf tanawwu', meaning the different verses that can clarify and they can carry different meanings all at once. And then you have meanings which are called ikhtilaf tadad, differing or differences that opposes the book of Allah and the sunnah of the message of Allah. Ikhtilaf tadad, those type of affairs are not permissible. You can't take the ayah in the book of Allah and say that it means this. For example, what's the example of ikhtilaf tadad? For example, you'll find that the nation of Islam, that they say that we will gather the criminals on the day of resurrection blue-eyed. They'll say, see, that this means the white man and the blue-eyed devil. That is a meaning that is baseless. You will never find it in the book of Allah. You will never find it in none of the tafsir of the companions, nor you find it in any of the tafsir of the tabi'een, nor from the scholars of the Salaf, nor from the scholars of today that are upon their methodology. That type of tafsir is called ikhtilaf tadad, a meaning that opposes the book of Allah. Because there's nothing that substantiates that meaning. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? That's called ikhtilaf tadad. You cannot use the verse in the book of Allah to satisfy your desires by saying, see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we will gather the criminals on the day of resurrection blue-eyed, and it means the white man or the white devil. No, if you look to the tafsir of it and check what Ibn Abbas and those who he taught from his students, the meaning of gathering those on the day of resurrection blue-eyed, what it means is that Allah will gather those who are upon disbelief, and He will gather those who are upon kufr and bid'ah. Of course, He will gather them on the day of resurrection to the point they will be so in a state of horror and fright that their eyes will turn blue. That they will be so scared and they'll be in a state of horror and they will be in a state of fright until their eyes will turn blue. Because the affair of the day of resurrection is extremely scary. Because now people are about to go to their permanent dwelling abode. So there is no going back to say, give me a second chance, so I can do some good deeds, I can turn over a new leaf. No, it's done. Now you have to go set towards your permanent eternal abode. And that is going to be a frightful moment, to the point where certain people's eyes will turn blue, as Ibn Abbas says in the tafsir. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So you have those type of tafsir, which is called ikhtilaf al-tadad. Ikhtilaf al-tadad, differences in the verses where they oppose the book of Allah. Those type of meanings, the ulama will clarify to you. They say, no, this meaning is what? Opposes the revelation. And you'll find certain verses where it says, no, this verse carries this meaning, this meaning, this meaning, and this meaning. It can mean all of them. A person might say, what's an example of that? For example, another example. Matter of fact, I got to keep going. Try to keep the lesson concise. Fourth meaning. Shaykh al-Islam says, the last one is the tafsir that no one knows except Allah, which is the ta'weed. We talked about this last class. What is the tafsir or the ta'weed that no one knows except Allah? The true reality of Allah's names and attributes, of how they are. How they are. Haqa'iq al-sifat. Haqa'iq al-asma. The true reality of His names and attributes. Or, for example, when the day of resurrection will be established. No one knows except Allah. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's essence is. How Allah's knowledge is. Like we said, brothers and sisters, no one can fathom a complete deity that's knowledge is not preceded by ignorance. Can you imagine that? Your mind can't understand it. Or something that can hear everything in the heavens and the earth at the same time. Your mind can't understand it. And something that hears everything in the heavens at the same time due to the different languages thereupon. Allah understands all of that. Can your mind begin to comprehend? So these type of affairs in which are the true reality of Allah's names and attributes, no one knows that except Allah. And this is what Shaykh al-Islam is speaking about here. Is it clear, everyone? Gee. So let's keep going. So Shaykh al-Islam says, "Man idda'a ilmahu fahuwa kadhib." Whoever claims to have knowledge of this, he is lying. Meaning, how Allah's names and attributes are. So whoever claims to have knowledge of this matter, what we just said, which only Allah has, either what they call بطريقة الكشف أو المكاشفة, either by so-called visions, or what I see in my dreams, or I see in my so-called imagination, or what I feel, and what my mind deems to be correct, or what my vision possesses, or what have you, to the point where their so-called mind, or their so-called kashf, or mukashafa, or shatahat, their so-called visions, or their dreams, or their tastes, or their so-called delusional behavior. If you want to say, to put it in better perspective, delusional behavior. Until the point where you'll find that some of them say that they've reached a point where they don't even need the book of Allah anymore, or they don't need the sunnah, the message of Allah. I can now go to the sky and attain the heavens, and I can even read the preserved tablet myself, until I can remove and extract information from it without needing the sunnah, the message of Allah. So I can now attain those realities in which Allah knows I can also attain it once I reach a certain level. Or for example, ilm al-batin, or ilm al-laduni, or laduni, that now I've attained knowledge in which only certain people possess, in which Allah has preferred. Even I'm on a higher level than the prophets and messengers, where I don't even need their sharia. I don't even need them, because I'm directly connected with Allah. Those people who say that, they so-called attain knowledge, so-called, then they're not to be what? They're not to be believed. Rather, a person who claims this type of claim has disbelieved. Any man or any person that claims they have attained and reached the level where they don't need what the message of Allah brought has apostated. And that their iman, so-called, when they say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, that his meaning for Muhammadan Rasulullah needs to be corrected. Because once you say Muhammadan Rasulullah, meaning that my affair of how I attain my knowledge has to come from the message of Allah, and what he conveyed in his authentic sunnah. And once you have now rid yourself of that and say, I don't need the sunnah or the sharia of Muhammad, then that testification of Muhammad Rasulullah has become what? Has become infringed upon. Meaning that meaning now has either been lifted, or it's been in the manner that we said can lead one down the road of apostation, where you have now removed that. So when a person says, I don't need the sunnah, all I have is the book of Allah, ask them, what does the meaning of Muhammad Rasulullah mean? Ask them, what does it entail? Ask them, what is the details of when you utter that testimony? What comes along with that? What now is a necessity? That you believe that the message of Allah ﷺ brought something in addition to not only the book of Allah, but also what Allah himself has informed that he has commanded you to take. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ. Whatever the messenger gives you, then what? Take it. Where is that, everyone? The authentic sunnah. The authentic sunnah, the message of Allah ﷺ, is an affair in which Allah has made it an obligation. And to say now, I don't need that, that is an infringement upon your testimony. Until your testimony needs to be what? Rectified. And that a person says that they have reached and attained levels where they don't need the sunnah anymore, then that affair, like we said, can either lead to the road of apostation. Rather, it is considered what? Disbelief. And which you'll find that some of the Muslims say today. And even if you go online, you'll be surprised at how many people to this point, even in this land, say, I don't need the sunnah. Just give me the book of Allah. I don't need that. All those ahadith, all those hadith, leave off hadith. Obey the hadith. No, when a person tries to argue with them, you say no. If you want to argue about me and my religion is the book of Allah and the sunnah. Don't try to now chop me down to try to what? Keep you restricted, even though you what? Are trying to so-called debate with me, even though the origin of debating is prohibited, especially for those who do not have proper knowledge in this regard, and that can easily be confused. The religion is the book of Allah and the sunnah, the message of Allah, and those affairs in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is revealed. And the one who claims that they don't need that, then that person has infringed upon the meaning of Muhammadur Rasulullah. And those from the Sufiyyah that you'll find that embark upon these type of what? Atrocities. طيب. So you'll find that, let's go back to the book again. وَهَذَا كَمَا قَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. He says that no soul, or there's not anyone that has knowledge of what has been hidden from him, for him or her, of coolness of the eyes, meaning of what is prepared for them of reward, as a repayment because of what they used to do. What is Shaykh al-Islam? Why did Shaykh al-Islam mention this ayah? Why did he put this in this particular context or in this chapter here? Why? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in this book that no one knows of what is hidden for them of coolness of their eye, meaning what they will receive as a great reward. Notice Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this book, bima. Be, or the word harf al-jar, or the preposition be, bima. With what they used to do. Or what is the word be here? Or the preposition, or the harf al-jar, ba. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says because of what they used to do. Now I just gave you the answer. The word ba, which means with, here is the reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah is clarifying that our actions is the reason for us entering paradise. And it's not the what? It's not the equal what? Recompense. Or the equal what? It's not the equal price for what you give in regards to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you of eternal bliss. It's not the price. There's no way something of our actions can be the exact repayment or pay for what Allah is going to give you of eternal bliss. For our actions, some of us might have lasted in this dunya. How many of us have embraced Islam maybe 15 years old, 20, 25, and then you die, for example, at the age of 40 and 50? That period of time frame, do you really think it is the equal amount of what you're going to receive of eternal bliss? Is that equally distributed in proportion? Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? You are a child. Allah bestowed His mercy upon all of us, where He didn't even have you in a state of accountability for all those years until you reached a certain age. So that certain age, the pen wasn't even what? The pen wasn't even upon you. It was raised. It was lifted. And then after we reached a certain age, some of us were still in the state of disbelief. Some of us were still in the state of Allah's anger, in His wrath. And some of us didn't even become Muslim until our deathbed. But they took shahada when they were about to die. So 40 or 50 years, 60 years, some people 70, 80 years, upon an affair that angers Allah. And all the way up to that point, they uttered the shahada. And Allah, as a result of it, will give them eternal bliss. And I'm asking everyone, is that a fair exchange to what they're going to receive or not? Is it a fair exchange or not? Is that considered exchange? It's not. Our actions are lowly that we should be amazed at ourselves to think that what Allah is going to give us of eternal bliss that the fair exchanges that we do will provide of our actions. That is the actual equal amount of what? Of what's considered of the compensation of what Allah is going to give us of pleasure forever. So that's the reason why the ba, or the proposition ba, here is what everyone is of the reason why Allah allows us to enter paradise. Not the actual equal what? The actual equal amount of what Allah is going to expect us to repay that receive. Oh Allah, I've done this. Allow me to enter paradise. It's an exact what? Fair exchange. No, it isn't. It's not a fair exchange. That's why the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned the authentic hadith, لَن يَنْجُوَ أَحْدٌ مِنْكُمْ بِعَمَلِهِ. None of you will be saved on the day of resurrection or earning paradise due to your actions. And when the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam here is removing ba, meaning the fair exchange. Meaning, oh message of Allah, even you? He said, not even me. Except that if Allah allows me to be what? Enveloped by His mercy and His virtue. So the message of Allah is trying to establish that it's not a fair exchange of our actions in which Allah will give us in compensation of the great reward. However, our actions is the reason for why we enter paradise, not the fair exchange or the equal exchange. In order for the what? The nusus, you'll find that what? That the text has informed that our actions is not the ithman. وَلَوْ لَمْ يُعْطِنَا رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ أَجْرَ أَعْمَالِنَا يَكُنْ ظَالِمًا. You'll find that the great Imam Shaykh Muhammad al-Jabari, he said about this, everyone, that he said that the text you'll find that they don't contradict themselves. Our actions is not the fair exchange or the equal exchange. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give us the reward due to our actions, Allah is not oppressing us. Because the verily, the ba, or the proposition, ba, which means because of, or it could be with, and it could come with different meanings. The harf al-jar ba here, the preposition, is not, like we said, the fair exchange. Rather, we say it's the reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He bestows His virtue upon us, and He allows us to enter paradise, and He gives us honor by entering it, then it's due to His fadl, it's due to His blessing and His bounty. Whoever Allah gives it to and honors them, then that is from His bounty and is from His what? His mercy. And whoever Allah lets down and He wants to remove that virtue and punish them, then it's due to His absolute, accurate, precise justice. Our actions, like we said, revolve in the falak, in the space or the arena of what Allah's virtue is, and in between His absolute justice. If Allah allows us to enter paradise, Allah Ta'ala does not oppress anyone. And Allah Ta'ala is not even come to our mind that Allah will render anyone to be what? In a state of injustice. Meaning Allah will repay everyone their full of what they deserve. Because the word injustice or dhulm means وَضْعُ الشَّيْءِ فِي غَيْرِ مَوْضِعِهِ. It means putting something in its improper place. And Allah does not put anything in its improper place. Everything is put where it needs to be and where it's supposed to be put. Accurately, precisely. Because, like we said, brothers and sisters, the word dhulm is to hold back from you what belongs to you. Or not to give you what you deserve and what is considered from your ownership or what you own. As for if Allah gives you of what? Of what is His. What belongs to Him. Everything in that, is there anything in the heavens and earth that doesn't belong to Allah? Everything belongs to Allah. Everything in the heavens and the earth. Without any exception. Our bodies, Allah owns it. Allah gave it to you to see what you do with it. But He owns everything in the heavens and the earth. And from that, Allah also gives what He owns is proper guidance. Guidance of the heart. That also belongs to Him. He owns it. If Allah holds it back, then He has not oppressed you because He owns it. Injustice is holding something back from you that you own. It's yours. It's your possession. However, everything belongs to Allah ta'ala. If He holds back, and He holds it back, and He prevents you from it, then Allah ta'ala has held it back due to His absolute, precise, accurate justice, due to what you made as a choice. And if Allah decides to have mercy, then it's due to His bounty, and His virtue, and His mercy subhanahu. We'll stop here inshallah. We'll continue tomorrow. What's today? Wednesday, right, everyone? We'll stop here inshallah. We'll put a mark on this. We'll stop and continue tomorrow. Any questions about the lesson, anyone? Fataawa.
So my cousin, he want to become Muslim, and I got a question about like hadith. So how could I explain to him like how the narrations of hadith go, like the change and stuff? Like I know the Prophet and the companions like wrote it down and stuff, but I want to explain to him like how they got it down like 1400 years ago. Basically, I don't know how to like explain it to him.
You mean how they?
Like I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain the question. Like you know, in Surah Hijr, Allah said He's going to preserve the Quran, right? I want to like, let's Surah Hijr.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He's going to preserve the book and the sunnah.
The book and the book and the sunnah. I want to explain to him like, because that's like a sign.
When the ayah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, "Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikr wa inna lahu lahafidhun," just doesn't mean the Quran. That's your answer right there. All you have to do is go back to the tafsir. Look to the tafsir of the ayah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Verily we sent down this remembrance." Find the tafsir what Ibn Abbas said. He said that the remembrance here does not just mean the Quran. It means also the authentic sunnah. Anything else?
The different types of ikhtilaf you were saying.
Ikhtilaf tanawwu'. Ikhtilaf tanawwu' means the differences of certain verses where the meanings that the ayah can mean. No, they can mean different meanings. Like for example, such as sama. No, we give another example. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, as we know the ayah, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the rope of Allah. All of you together, do not be divided. Right? So you go back to the tafsir. Some of them is the Quran. Some of the tafsir is what? The Sunnah. Some of the tafsir is what? The way of Abu Bakr, or the way of Umar, or all those different meanings. Is that contradictory, or does it mean all of them? It means all of them. Holding on to the book of Allah is holding on to the Quran. Holding on to the rope of Allah is holding on to the Sunnah. Holding on to the rope of Allah is holding on to the way of Abu Bakr or Umar. Holding on to the rope of Allah is holding on to all of that. So that's ikhtilaf tanawwu'. That's difference of what? Different types. Ikhtilaf tadad, the differences of what opposes. For example, the rope of Allah, that it means the way of the Ikhwanis. It means the way of the Christians. That meaning is baseless. Holding on to the rope of Allah is holding on to Elijah Muhammad and what Farrakhan is upon. And that the alien ship will come and save us. That's all nonsense. That's ikhtilaf tadad. It's baseless. There's nothing that substantiates that meaning. Is it clear, everyone? G. We just gave another example, what the brother said. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in His book, "Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun." Verily we sent down this dhikr, this remembrance. So he just said, no, the book of Allah. No, the meaning of the ayah also means what? The authentic sunnah. So Allah said He would preserve not only His book, but also the authentic sunnah, the message of Allah would be what? Preserved. Be preserved either by those sciences that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed those ulama to come in order for the preservation of the authentic sunnah of our Prophet. From them is the science of hadith, and those chains and those narrators, you'll find in which those scholars memorized, and they were tested, and who they tested, in order to know who brought what was correct, to who lied, to who had a weak memory, to who had somewhat a little slight mishap in their memory, or forgetfulness in their memory. All those things have been recorded. And that's all part of Allah's preservation of His religion, which you see today. We have all the narrators of hadith. Everybody has been preserved. We know their history. We know their date. We knew where they migrated. We know their lands. We know their countries. We knew where they were born. We knew where they died. We know all of it. There's no religion that can give you that type of detail. None. We have encyclopedias and telling you every single narrative. What was their, how many hadith they memorized, how many hadith they narrated, who they narrated to, whether or not they were heard, whether they didn't hear it from that individual, or they did hear it, how did they hear it, did they get it from their book, did they read it from their book, did they get it from their memory, to the end of it. All of it has been recorded, preserved. That's all part of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, saying that He will preserve His religion. We have encyclopedias upon books about every narrative. Their name, their kunya, their grandfather, their son, the grandfather, to the end of it. We have all of it. How many of you look in the hadith, you see in the chain, Abdurrahman ibn so-and-so, ibn so-and-so, ibn so-and-so, who's originally from so-and-so. Then he settled in the end of his life at such and such city. And he heard from Ibn Abbas, and he heard from this person, and he narrated upon. All that's been preserved. Preservation. If that's not preservation, then what is? No religion has that. None. Zero. You bring me one that has that type of depth. You will never be able to bring one. Did that give you extra clarification?
Yeah, I'm writing all down.
All the people have to do is just study. If you study your religion, you'll be proud to be Muslim, Sunni, Salafi. You'll be proud. You won't feel down. You'll feel proud. Happy. Ignorance is what causes what? For you to be depressed. For you to look down upon what you're upon until you glorify what these people are upon with kufr. Is it clear, everyone? I'm going to stop here. Anything else? Anything else? Stop here. Any questions? Stop here. Sallallahu وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك. This is the explanation of the book called Hamawiyyah by Shaykh Taymiyyah. Some people tell me this book is too hard, but if you read it, brothers, there's nothing hard about what I'm reading. To me, it's not. You tell the people how the Quran is understood. Break it down slightly, bit by bit, the people understand it. I don't know anyone that they think that I'm scared to read Hamawiyyah. And once you break it down, you'll be like, this is easy. It can be easily understood. It just takes a little time. It can be easily understood. But I might be forced to change it. Allahu Akbar. We'll stop here. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabi Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. People complaining. I don't understand.